Well, it's 4 o'clock. I don't know if there'll be others joining us, but we can get going. Um, so welcome. It is week 10, which means that we are about halfway through. For those that have to leave early to go back to school, we're more than halfway through. Um, and I wanted to spend the first 10, 15 minutes just catching up with everybody, how things are going on your farms, answering questions, talking about marketing, finishing the conversation from last week about what you're observing about marketing. Um, and we we can touch base about the upcoming next field day. And then today we're going to talk about food justice, which encompasses a lot of things. Um, so I'm glad you're here, Clara, because some of the things you'll be learning at law school may cover some of the things I hope to talk about in the next couple weeks. I was just putting together next week's lesson plan, and I'm planning to have you guys talk about the Pigford settlement and the Keats Eagle settlement, and those are things you might learn about because they have to do with the USDA and discrimination settlements against Black and Indigenous people. So to start out with, let's just go around the room and just share how things are going. What are some challenges or successes from the last week from your farms? Let's start with Gretchen.
I can't even think of what I did last week. I'm really tired a lot of the time. That makes it hard. Just struggling to like balance getting sleep and being involved on the farm, and like not being there when I need to not be there, just kind of like doing the hours I can handle and not putting in tons more hours. Successes, I don't know. I really don't remember the last week.
You said a few things in your experience report about a beaver dam and going swimming in the river.
Oh yeah, we did that.
I bet the kids enjoyed that.
Yeah, we went and toured the beaver dam with a few of them. They have 2 different beaver dams there. And that was really interesting.
Ah. Well, how about you, Elise?
Well, it's been like super hot and also super smoky this past week. So we've just kind of been working through that, pulling a lot of weeds as always. The high tunnel is not up yet. And it's looking a little wonky, but that's because the boys are helping make it. I blame them. We harvested garlic today, which was super exciting because you guys got to all see that. And we finally did it today and they were looking perfect. Like none of them were busted open. And we saved it before the thunderstorm because it started pouring hard. It was kind of scary, actually. I'm kind of nervous about like the things around the tomato plants because we haven't like pinned them down yet. So they might be blown over when I get back. But fingers crossed they're not. But things are going super good. I love working outside.
How are you guys drying your garlic?
We were looking up YouTube videos about that today. We were going to leave it outside for 2 to 3 days, but then it started raining. So I think she put it in her garage. And I think she wants to make like this box made out of wood and have like chicken wire so she could set the garlic down on it. But we will see.
I have some garlic growing in pots, and I was thinking about the farm tour because one of the people, I can't remember who, was asking, well, how do you know when it's ready to harvest?
So we figured out the bottom 3 leaves, when they turn brown, that means like those are the 3 outermost layers of the garlic forming. So when those leaves are dead and brown, then it's probably ready to harvest. You don't want to wait until all the leaves are brown because that means that each of the layers is going to be compromised and like brittle and you won't be able to preserve the garlic.
Cool.
Right? I was like, this is amazing. I love learning.
Well, thank you. It's super fun to learn about the garlic. Clara.
We didn't do farmers market last week, so it was a little bit more relaxed. We both went on vacation this weekend, so it was just a lot of just like getting things tidied up and watered before. So yeah, no one's been on the farm for like 4 days, which is really scary. I'm scared to see if everything's okay tomorrow. I'm sure it'll be fine. But I helped out at the co-op delivery for the first time on Wednesday, so that was really fun to like see how that works and like see the customers and all that kind of stuff and see the other products that were brought in from the other farms. What else did we do? Our tomatoes are starting to be ready, so I've just been munching on cherry tomatoes all weekend.
Awesome. How is the co-op doing?
Pretty good, where it's new producers are being added at a pretty good rate, have a pretty good variety of products. Customers and like customer orders seem to have kind of like leveled off over the past few weeks, but like it's still been like consistent, which is good. I think at this point it's just about like getting the word out and all that stuff. But I think everything's fine. I think like they are being really smart by like starting on a smaller scale and just working through everything and like actually like build a really good foundation. Because I think in the past some other projects have like gone too big too fast and I've run into issues that way.
And I want to take the opportunity to remind everybody that tomorrow at 2 is our monthly meeting of the North Dakota Local Food Development Alliance. And we're going to be spending a lot of time just in discussion about what are your local foods challenges and successes in your region, like the co-op. So I hopefully somebody from the Red River Harvest Co-op comes tomorrow and just shares how it's going, because NDLFDA is here to support projects like that, and we want to see you succeed, and we want to help in any way that we can. And that meeting is in your portal. It's listed as one of the optional activities under the upcoming events. Josh, how are things going at DCB?
Quite nicely. We've been doing a lot, actually. So I've been continuing with my somewhat weekly harvests of basil. We got 3 bags this week. We got our high tunnel cover replaced for my specific high tunnel. We had a group from the reservation. I don't remember which reservation it is, but a decent sized group came out. They helped us put up the new high tunnel cover, which was really nice of them. But lots of weeding and stuff like that.
So what have you planted in your high tunnel?
So I've planted part of it, but I still have some to go because we're doing succession planting, and it's a bit late now to do multiple rows of, say, carrots, because we want to have enough space for fall crops. But as I mentioned, I have carrots, beets. We'll pretend I have onions that survived, green onions, and a row of bush beans.
Oh, great.
The reason I mentioned the onions is barely surviving is we're not really sure what happened, but across campus, like none of the onions survived. We're not sure why. We made sure they had plenty of water and they weren't being suffocated by weeds. They just didn't survive well. I have a couple that have survived, but I think the transplanting was just too rough on them.
I've noticed that people tend to plant onions early in the spring. They're pretty cool hardy. So
Yeah.
maybe does that translate to not being heat tolerant?
It could be that they aren't heat tolerant, but I also suspect that weather had a problem with them, because shortly after I got them transplanted in, we started to have some decently heavy rains, which I know didn't help because the high tunnel was not looking the greatest. You guys saw the high tunnel we have from our like the walk around we did a few weeks ago. So we have like 4 foot wide, 12 rungs of 4 foot wide for the long part of our high tunnel. Well, like across the top, about halfway through on both sides, we were missing like 3 rungs worth. We were missing like 12 feet across on both sides. It was insane.
Oh,
So we were losing a ton from that.
Yeah.
And we have pretty clayey soil, so that probably wasn't helping too much.
Mhm.
As that's my guess.
Well, good luck on the rest of the high tunnel, and it's exciting to see your progress.
Yep. I guess I could mention what I'm planning to plant next if you want.
Sure.
We're planning to do more leafy greens, spinach, kale, broccoli, and then the one really fall loving crop or underground crop, if you will, radishes.
Mhm.
Those 4 we're planning to do in the high tunnel as well. Once we can harvest the carrots and everything else, as soon as they're harvested, we're going to plant them,
Terrific.
the fall crop.
Well, I wanted to touch base about the July 28th farm tour. I don't have the times nailed down yet, but I did reach out to Carol and Dawn this morning, and I'm waiting confirmation from them, but I'd like it. I'm thinking maybe a morning tour that gets done around from like 9:30 to about 2 o'clock, 1:45, 2 o'clock, just to avoid the heat. And so that would be a tour of stable days, and then we would go up to Ragnarud Farms, which is looks like it's about 9 miles from stable days to the north. And again, of course, we will provide breakfast and lunch for you. Carpooling again would be great. So I can send out an email. Maybe those of you from Fargo want to carpool up to Grand Forks. Josh, you're welcome to ride with me again. And I'll touch base with April as well. And yeah, I think that's everybody. We're just in like the Fargo area, Grand Forks, and Botno. So I'll make sure to send out an email once I have times nailed down so that people can plan carpools. The other thing is just, there's been in the news that there's a new Delta variant and cases are rising again in some areas. Also, after the last farm tour, several of us got bad colds. My COVID test was negative, and so at least one other person got tested and it was negative. So I think we just passed around a bad cold. But I am going to require masks on this tour. And I did order you guys Farms branded masks, and they're kind of cute. So I'm just gonna, can you see them? It's green with the repeating F. Those are supposed to arrive at my house today. So I will bring those to the tour, and then we'll have masks to wear. Okay. So before we move on to the lesson, did you all have any questions about anything or comments about marketing from last week?
What was the whole farm assignment? There was something that Felicity talked about last week that was like a diagramming farm something. No?
Oh, I think that must have been an error.
Okay.
We were kind of, I wasn't intending for her to lead the session last week. So, because I thought my doctor's appointment would be done much earlier. And so my lesson plan was kind of rough and intended for my eyes. And so I think that was something left over from a previous, that was,
Okay.
yeah, she probably picked up something that was meant for farm beginnings.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I just want to make sure I wasn't missing something as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, so farms is all about sustainability, social, environmental, and economic. And if we're going to teach about social sustainability, we can't leave out racial justice and food justice from that conversation, because they're critical. And there've been, it's been in the public conversation a lot more since George Floyd and last summer. And that also means that there are more educational resources out there. But this could be our whole class if we wanted it to be. This is a big conversation, and I want to make sure that you guys learn about ag production as well. So been trying to figure out how do I do this topic justice, well in the time that we have. So I think we're going to start talking about it today, and then for the next maybe 3 or 4 sessions, we'll spend maybe 15 minutes of each session on a topic related to food justice and racial justice, in addition to our production topics such as soil health, just so that we can cover the breadth of it and do it. I mean, it still won't fully do it justice, but it's gives it a little bit more time. So what I want you to leave this program with, at minimum, is just a basic understanding that the farming experiences that you're observing in the northern Midwest on white-owned, white-led farms in a historically white community is a lot different. It's not the only experience. Black farmers in the South have a much different experience. Indigenous people up here have a different experience. They don't have the same ease of access to land and financing and support. And I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's been other historic disenfranchisement. Just for ease of communication, I'm going to use, when I refer to people who are Black, Indigenous, and people of color, I'm going to use the term BIPOC. I don't assume that people know, so I clarify my terms. So that's what I mean when I say BIPOC. So let's dive into our video. This is a video about Leah Penniman, who runs Soulfire Farm in New York. And I've been on a Zoom meeting with her through the Farm Beginnings Collaborative, but she's also kind of the leading voice in the movement to end racism and injustice in the food system. And I've got 2 videos, but the one I'm going to show you is the one that I gave you the link to from today. And so I'm going to cue this up and share my screen.
Yep.
Oh, thank you. All right. This is about 10 minutes. I might stop it partway through. Actually, I might let it play all the way through. It's a good video. So reach out in the chat if you need something in the next 10 minutes.
That make me happier than physically farming.
Let's get this back to there we go.
There are a few things that make me happier than physically farming. Big, sweaty, kind of brutal tasks. I think I've always known in some form that this farm and this work around connecting people and land needed to exist.
You wanna be free of your anxiety, just so catchy. I think the wind likes it.
My name is Leah Penniman, and I'm the founding co-director at Soulfire Farm in Grafton, New York. Soulfire Farm is a Black Indigenous-led community farm that's dedicated to ending racism in the food system and training up the next generation of activist farmers. Between 1 and 2% of farms are Black owned, which is down from a peak of 14% of Black owned farms in 1910. And this is not because Black folks don't want to farm. This is because of a whole legacy of discrimination, of institutional racism. I grew up in a small rural town called Ashburnham, Massachusetts. I'm the oldest of 3, and we were, for most of our childhood, the only brown kids in our entire school. And we experienced just a lot of social exclusion and racial bullying. It ranged from taunting, being called names, to assumptions about our intelligence. The land and the forest were a salvation for me. I attended every single farming conference that I could afford to go to. But by my late teens, early 20s, I started to get disillusioned because I'd look around at these farming conferences and all the presenters were white, and I looked around and there was only a handful of people of color. A mentor of mine said something so important to me at that time. She was just like, look, don't give up. I know that right now it seems like you're out of place, but remember that our ancestors have been farmers for millennia and that our ancestors built the agricultural system of this country on their backs. I was really grateful that she was there and encouraged me to stick with it. My partner Jonah and I were living in the south end of Albany, New York with our then infant children, Nashima and Emmett. And despite our master's degrees and over a decade of farming experience, found it impossible to get fresh food for our children. There were no supermarkets, no farmers markets, no available community garden plots. The only food is a corner store, a liquor store, and a McDonald's. This system of segregation is termed by the government a food desert. To us, there's nothing natural about apartheid. So we call it what it is. It's food apartheid. It comes out of a legacy of redlining and housing discrimination, of divestment from communities of color, and has resulted in the situation today where if you're white, you're 4 times as likely to have a supermarket on your block than if you're Black. You're more likely to have diabetes, heart disease, and other diet-related illnesses. Not because you don't know how to eat, but because there, is a scarcity of affordable, culturally appropriate, quality food that's accessible. And so we worked to establish a community garden right on the corner plot near our home. So when our neighbors found out that we knew how to farm, they encouraged us to start the Farm for the People. And the idea for Soulfire Farm was born. We purchased the land in 2006, and it took us 4 years to transform this marginal, degraded, and vacant land into human habitat and suitable farmland. And we opened the farm in 2011 with a small food distribution program that went right to our neighbors in the South End. A couple thousand folks roll through here every year to attend our farm training programs.
The rest of you are just going to contemplate and pray for the strawberries' happy homemaking.
There are 8 of us working here on the farm. We have an amazing team. We have a number of day-long programs and week-long camps for youth who are interested in farming, and a whole lot of community days and workshops on particular skills. It's really whatever our community is asking us for, we do our best to provide. Our most popular is the week-long BIPOC Fire, stands for Black Indigenous People of Color Farming in Relationship with Earth. We have folks coming from 37 states and 3 countries this year, Spanish and English speakers, young and old. And we spend a week together doing hands-on-the-land training. We have a number of courses on business management, marketing, as well as crop planning. If you count everyone who's gone through any program, we have over 10,000 alumni. We provide ongoing and forever mentorship. We hook folks up with jobs, land, fellowships, and other opportunities. Land is the place where the lynchings, the beatings, the enslavement, the sharecropping took place. And so there's no way to escape the trauma associated with that. And so a big part of what I and we are trying to do at Soulfire is to reach back across the narrative of the hundreds of years of land-based oppression to Cleopatra's, compost piles and the raised beds of the Ovambo people in Namibia, to reach back to the work of Dr. George Washington Carver, creating regenerative agriculture, and Dr. Booker T. Watley with Farm to Table. So to really reclaim the dignity of it is super important. If we can't feed ourselves, we can't truly be free.
All right, so everyone who's part of the tour, just come a little bit closer. We'll go ahead and get started. We're gonna travel around the farm together, get a chance to visit some of the sacred sites, hear the stories, and you can ask your questions as well as we go. So follow me this way.
Community Farm Day is our monthly public event where volunteers come from all around the region to share in the labor of the land, to have a potluck lunch, and then to participate in a tour and Q&A session. It's the one time that the farm's open to the public.
Now, what's very important with strawberries is that their meristem or growth point is right here. So what do you think happens if you bury that?
Drowning.
It will not grow.
We have a bunch of different teams working on different tasks, including transplanting the fall strawberries, cleaning and curing the garlic and onions, harvesting potatoes, removing some of the materials and supplies that we're done with for the season. And Jonah will be working with some volunteers, many of whom have traveled 3 or 4 hours just to get here today. We have a lot of teens that come through the farm, and not all of them are going to be farmers, but they see folks who look like them following their dreams and being their own bosses and running their own institutions. What matters to me is that they can see a wider vision of what's possible for their own lives.
This is what we're trying to get to, so it's great to see it in person. Yeah, just a goal. It makes my heart flutter. Like, honestly, I'm so inspired.
When I say 5, you say minutes. 5. Until lunch, which means you should please help all the teams clean up and put everything away.
We do doorstep delivery of vegetables, eggs, pastured meat, and herbs, and folks can actually pay for that using their EBT benefits. The vast majority of people say that having those vegetables has made a huge difference in their health, whether that's a reduction in blood pressure or cholesterol or overall sense of well-being. And especially for our lower income members, many of them say if it wasn't for those vegetables, they'd literally be eating ramen and boiled pasta and canned foods because they simply don't have anywhere to get, fresh food like we offer.
Hi, we're Lively. Hearing loss is frustrating, but getting your hearing back shouldn't be. That's why we created a breakthrough way to make hearing easier than ever. Lively hearing aids may be tiny, but they're packed with advanced technology.
There's nothing that makes me happier than seeing our alumni farm. So for example, Dallas Robinson in North Carolina just recently opened the Harriet Tubman Farm. Folks like Keisha Cameron outside of Atlanta, Georgia at High Hog Farm. Fundamentally, I want to create a different kind of educational environment for young people that I never got to experience, where you can go ahead and be proud to be a soil nerd, and you also will have your culture uplifted, your heritage uplifted, and be affirmed for who you are and encouraged to pursue your wildest dreams.
I see Leah and I stand there and I listen to her and I'm just in complete awe. Like I feel a physical reaction in my body and I just want to be quiet and listen.
I've had mixed feelings in the past around doing public speaking. It always seemed like the real work was here on the farm and then I'd go out and just talk about the real work. And something shifted for me when I witnessed how many people who heard our talks then went on to join a program to learn how to farm, or did something like give away their land to a Black farmer. It's really an honor and pleasure to be here with all of you. I feel excited, I feel deeply pleased to talk about two of my favorite things, which are the earth and the ancestors and what they want us to be up to. Our waiting list for our training programs is years long. Our people are yearning, right? Some of us confuse the scene of the crime, which was the land, with the crime. But the fact is the land has always had our back. In fact, we survived because of that connection with the land. My hope is that we spread our love, our knowledge, our resources out through the network of Black and brown farmers so that, 10, 20 years from now, people will be like, wait, what's Soulfire again? Because there's literally right around the corner a Black and brown led teaching farm, so that it becomes so commonplace that we have to remind our children about a time when all the land was white owned and a time when all the farmers were exploited, because that's become such a distant memory.
So that was Leah Penniman and Soulfire Farm. And a couple of the people in the video are people that I've gotten to meet at farming conferences and Farm Beginnings collaborative training. So it was super fun to see them in the video. The woman singing at the beginning of the video is Dallas Robinson, the one.
If you or a loved one is fighting type 2 diabetes or pre-diabetes, this discovery could save your life. Top doctor from
Stop. Yeah. So Dallas Robinson has started the Harriet Tubman Freedom Farm in North Carolina. And I've gotten to hang out with her at the Farm Beginnings Collaborative, which is an organization that Farms is part of, along with other nonprofits that provide beginning farmer education. So what were your thoughts about the video, what you saw in the video? How did it make you feel? Were there parts that inspired you?
It reminded me about an episode on the 1619 podcast that the New York Times did over a year ago now. They had an episode about Black farmers, and kind of it gave more context of some of the things that they were talking about. Like she mentioned during her Harvard speech that there's some hesitation specifically with African Americans who are descendants of slaves, of like returning to the land and like the trauma that can bring up and working through that. And then a big part of that episode was talking about how historically and ongoing banks have been a huge culprit on why there aren't very many Black farmers, giving different types of loans and different loan conditions and rules, and just basically making it impossible for Black farmers to like acquire, maintain, or keep their land. Like eventually they just are forced to fall into debt and have to sell their land to white farmers who get much better loan conditions that they are. I don't know, it was really upsetting. It was really, episode made me very, very mad. So I hope people take time to like get some of like the context of what they're talking about, and not just like, oh, racism exists and that's why there aren't very many Black farmers. It's like, no, like let's peel back, like what conditions have and are such that there aren't very many BIPOC farmers.
Absolutely. And I will go looking for that podcast. I mean, I found the New York Times' 1619 podcast. If you would help me find that episode, I'll put that in the homework so that we all can get a better understanding of the context. Because yeah, we are just like, that video was just an introduction and we're just scratching the surface right now, but there are so many deeper issues that are part of it. I'm hoping, I think the Pigford settlement was also part of that, and I'm not prepared to talk about it yet because I haven't read about exactly what it was, but we're going to learn about that probably next week. Basically, the USDA discriminated against Black farmers and there was a class action lawsuit. So I'm not sure if that discrimination included lending practices, probably because the USDA gives Farm Service Agency loans. But any other reactions to the video?
I thought it was kind of interesting, like compared to the farms that we toured. Like they've been, the ones that we looked at had been going for around the same time, like the 4 to 5 years, and that was how long it took her to clear the land and get it suitable for farming. So even like just starting farther back, there isn't like suitable land to work from in like the cities or in the food apartheid areas.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not something that I've ever really thought about because we don't have that issue here, and I just don't see it.
We don't see it. I want to give other people opportunities for reactions, but we're going to talk about food deserts next and food apartheid, and I'm going to show you a map of where they do exist in North Dakota, including Grand Forks. Any other reactions?
I admit I found it kind of interesting that the main speaker admittedly was not only colored, but also a woman. I know a lot of farmers, especially newer farmers, tend to be men. So that also showed another aspect of it's normally men who start up the farm, not a woman. So just found that interesting.
And like when I'm writing USDA grants, the USDA, they'll often say that they'll they'll give you special consideration if you're working with what they call underserved populations, and that includes women, BIPOC people, and like low income or socially disadvantaged. These are the terms that the USDA uses to distinguish.
Also, I'm sorry for calling them colored. I forgot that we call them BIPOC. Sorry.
Okay, where's my lesson plan? So I wanted to talk about food deserts, or Leah Penniman called it food apartheid. And so first of all, are you all familiar with the term apartheid and what it usually means? Maybe I should pull up a definition.
If you could, I would appreciate
it. So typically it refers to South Africa, which was colonized by the Dutch, who enslaved most of the Black South African people that lived there. And then, was it the English fought the Dutch for control? Anyway, incredible segregation and colonization, but like brutal, what's the word I'm looking for? Just the Black people, the indigenous people of South Africa were horribly mistreated. And boy, I'm mangling this history lesson. Nelson Mandela, you've maybe heard of him. He helped lead the fight for freedom. So these are some of the ideas associated with apartheid. I'm going to share my screen where I've got the Wikipedia definition. In South Africa, a policy or system of segregation or discrimination on grounds of race, or segregation on grounds other than race. Okay, it's an Afrikaans, which is the language of the Dutch colonists in South Africa, a word meaning separateness or the state of being apart, literally aparthood. And it's not a history book, but it's very readable. The comedian Trevor Noah is South African, and he wrote a autobiography, which is an easy read, but also a good way to get a better understanding of those ideas. The principles of apartheid. I think it's called Born a Crime, and I really enjoyed reading it. So, what is a food desert? She used that term, and where'd it go? This is going to be in your homework. Share my screen again. This is just from Medical News Today. This is just a basic definition. What do we mean when we talk about a food desert? It's regions where people have limited access to healthful and affordable food. This could be because they're living in an urban area where the only food stores are like convenience stores, or this could be because they're in a rural area like North Dakota. And so it's linked to health risks, and it's correlated with, you know, areas of poverty and low income and the other social issues affiliated with that. This is the USDA's food desert map. It's from the Economic Research Service, and it's their research atlas. And the green areas are areas that are both low income and low access to foods. So that could be because it's really far to the nearest grocery store. Rural grocery stores in North Dakota often struggle. But does anybody notice where these green areas are?
They're on the reservations.
Yep. This one is the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa Reservation. This is the Fort Berthold Reservation. This is Spirit Lake. And this down here is Standing Rock. The other thing I noticed, this little green spot north of Minot and this one east of Grand Forks are the air bases. So enlisted men are often, I don't think they get paid very much at all. And so it's interesting that these are also considered areas of low income and low access. There's also some neighborhoods in Fargo and Grand Forks. I don't know Fargo or Grand Forks well enough to know these neighborhoods, but like Clara, do you know, does this surprise you that these areas of Fargo would be on the atlas?
No, I live in North Fargo, and the closest grocery store to me is over a mile away. But like, I've lived in South Fargo and South Moorhead before and had grocery stores within 5 minutes. And North Fargo tends to be is lower income than a lot of the rest of Fargo.
Okay, that makes sense then. Gretchen, do you know Grand Forks well enough to have any insight about these neighborhoods?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Looks like it's north. Actually, this is right around the university, right around UND. And then this is over by the river.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So, and then some of these other areas, like this is Sheridan County. That's actually where I'm from. I don't know. I guess it is probably kind of low income. It's very, very rural, and there's like one or two towns, and they're both like less than 200, less than 300 people. So this may have to do with rurality and just like lack of grocery stores. But it's just really rural. So yeah, food deserts are definitely, and food access are an issue here in North Dakota. And like I said, like we saw, the reservations are disproportionately affected, even though some of the tribes, especially the ones that lived along the Missouri River, like the three affiliated, the Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara, were some of the first farmers in the state before they were forced off of their fertile river bottom lands when the Missouri River was flooded to form Lake Sakakawea. So I guess in the coming, go ahead. Yeah.
A fun fact about food deserts, because I did have to learn about this in one of my classes. Food deserts are, for the most part, they exist anywhere you can't access a supermarket slash grocery store within 1 mile by foot or walking, or 10 miles by car. If you can't do either of those, you're in a food desert.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Oh, there was some other oh, right. I wanted to talk with you guys about food sovereignty too. There's some other terms as well that have sprung up because, you know, distance isn't the only factor. So there's a term that's been coined, food swamps, a region that provides adequate access to healthful and affordable food, as well as an overabundance of less healthful food options. So I'm not sure what would be an example of that.
Rural California, there are so many more sweets than there are actually healthy foods. That is definitely a good example of that.
Okay.
I'm serious. There's like 4 bakeries to one like produce store, if you will. It's pretty sad.
They also list food mirages, which when I read this one, I think of like areas that are being gentrified, where historically, you know, the residents are pushed out by upper class people that are moving in and, you know, building the downtown condos with the Whole Foods that nobody can afford to shop at. This is an area where people live close to grocery stores, offering a variety of healthful foods, but can't afford those foods. And so they have to travel further to find healthful foods within their budget.
Is it like solely based on grocery stores? Or like if you have a garden and live out in the country but are 10 miles, more than 10 miles from a grocery store, is that still considered a food desert?
I think it's mostly about grocery stores. Local foods, gardening and farming are posed as solutions to food deserts and food insecurity and hunger. But even with a garden, it's still there's still some things that, I mean, you're not going to grow avocados or oranges and you're not going to, you know, in the winter, you're not going to have any fresh produce. It's going to be all canned and frozen. So, you know, there are some practical barriers to even, you know, your garden can get you pretty far, but not all the way.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I wanted to also make sure that we at least read through the definition of food sovereignty, and we'll talk, I'll find, I've got some articles from Civil Eats and other things so that we can do some pre-reading and have a more rich discussion next week. But food sovereignty, what is it? Often posed as a not a total solution, but one of the ways to fight food deserts. Actually, could I have a volunteer to wait? You're not looking at my screen. Sorry. Now, can I have a volunteer to read the definition of food sovereignty aloud?
I can.
Thank you.
Let me move you out of the way.
Food
sovereignty is the right of peoples to healthy and culturally appropriate food produced through ecologically sound and sustainable methods, and the right to define their own food and agriculture systems. It puts the aspirations and needs of those who produce, distribute, and consume food at the heart of food systems and policies, rather than the demands of markets and corporations.
So I bet there are other resources that we will be reading from this U.S. Food Sovereignty Alliance. So oftentimes, maybe like immigrant populations, resettled refugee populations, they might be resettled in a low income affordable area because that's where the rent is affordable, but that area may not, it may be a food desert, and the food that's there may not be culturally appropriate. Hopefully Natalie will be with us next week and maybe she has observed some things that Growing Together. In the past, I've gotten to talk to some of the new Americans who participated Growing Together community gardens in Fargo, and well, one example is Simeon, who is now farming with the New Roots cooperative, and because they couldn't get their traditional foods, they would start growing them in the Growing Together garden. So he was growing African eggplant, which he has been saving the seeds, and now that is being sold through North Circle Seeds, that variety. They were harvesting the amaranth leaves, which is, you might know it as pigweed that you weed out of your gardens. But that amaranth is a traditional green that's raised as a food crop in some places in Africa. So they were harvesting that and taking it home and eating it. I don't know what else. They were just they'd saved some seeds and brought them with. They were planting some really unique crops. They were eating the leaves of the green beans, which I did not know were edible. And I guess you could go out and take a nibble off the leaves of your green bean plants, but it might be one of those things that requires being processed in a certain way. So I would do some research before you start grazing on your green bean plants. So that was the overview. I just wanted to at least introduce you to some terms, some ideas. We'll dive deeper in the coming weeks. Any questions or comments? Yeah.
One second, I need to find it again. I want to return just for a second about food apartheid.
Mm-hmm.
From this article, and I really liked.
Do you want to share your screen?
Yes. Oh yeah, and then
I can make you. Whoops. I can make you a co-host, and you can share it.
Okay.
Oh.
And then also, I think, yeah, I haven't heard the term food apartheid before, but I like it quite a bit better than food deserts.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that we talk about food deserts make it seem like it's just a coincidence, like it's just like a happenstance of economics, while food apartheid makes it very clear that often what we would consider food deserts are a result of policy. So redlining is a really good example. Is the most prime example, and that these things don't just happen. Like they can be very intentional, and then can intentionally be fixed through good public policy. I don't know. In conversations like this, I always really try to make it a point of like being clear about who the actor is, as well as like who the victims are. Just like, so we know who the victims are of food deserts, but then like who and what systems are causing them to be a reality for so many people.
And are you able to give a quick definition of redlining? Because I don't know if everybody does, and I'm not sure if I can define it succinctly. It's one of those things, I know what it is, but can I put it into words? I'm not sure.
Sure. So after slavery was abolished, and after the after the Reconstruction, when free Black Americans were moving away from the South and into northern cities like New York, Chicago, Detroit, Baltimore, the white residents there were very uncomfortable of the possibility that they might have Black neighbors. And so their redlining refers to this lieu of policies and practices that made it such that segregation was still real in like the housing market. And so the term redlining, like literally cities planners would go in with the red line and then like outline neighborhoods of like, this is where we're going to put the Black people, basically. So that's how you get those like really concentrated urban centers. And so all of that was reinforced by like the term, have you heard the term like white flight? So these white people who could afford to would leave the city into the suburbs, and then again, banks would come in with really discriminatory loans and making it very difficult for Black families to get mortgages in predominantly white neighborhoods, so on and so forth. And so now today, all of those practices are very illegal now if you can prove that they're happening. But then there's all sorts of consequences like this, like food deserts are one. In these neighborhoods that have been deprived of a lot of like public spending. So there's less parks and green spaces and trees, which make it so that like with climate change, like those neighborhoods are like, can be up to 2 degrees hotter than the surrounding more affluent neighborhoods. And so on and on and on, like these policies have really long lasting effects. So that's redlining in a nutshell.
Just a great explanation, thank you. I also dropped a link to an NPR article that explains redlining. Same thing that Clara just described, except more words and less clear. Josh, were you going to say something? Nope. Okay.
I was just putting my hands over my head.
Okay. Well, great discussion. Thanks, guys. We will meet again next week on Monday, and then next week, Wednesday, we will have our farm tour. I will get information about the tour out to you in the coming days, so we can organize carpools, and I can give you the actual start and end times. And next week, we're going to talk about mushrooms, and I've invited Alyssa Jones Sullivan, who you may have seen at Red River Farmers Market as Exit 44 Flowers and More. She's selling fresh cut flowers and mushrooms and woodworking items. So she's going to talk, and she's bringing in her mushroom growing partner, Chris, who's actually doing the mushroom production. So they'll talk. And Alyssa was an intern last summer, which is why I wanted to bring her in, so you could, she was an intern last summer, and this summer she's doing it. She's got her own farm. So, all right. Well, thanks a million for a great class, and I will see you all next week.
Was there a question of the week, or did I miss that?
I didn't come up with a question. Last week your question was to talk to your farmer about marketing. I don't have a good one for this week.
Can I suggest one?
Yes, please.
I would really love if everyone looked in their communities and look at food access disparities and maybe think of some ways that we could address that.
Yeah.
Because often these things are talked about of just like to Gretchen's point, like it seems like it's like an urban thing, like someplace that happens like in Fargo maybe, but like definitely Minneapolis and Chicago, but like hunger and food access is very real in all communities.
So yeah, look around, look at your community. Where are the grocery stores located? Where are the low income and high income neighborhoods located? Where are the food banks? Where are the community gardens? And do some reflecting on that, and we'll start with that next week, what you've observed in your own communities. Thank you. Great question, Clara. All right. Well, have a great week, and we'll see you in a week.